So in today's video, we're going to be looking at different cylinders. I've got a handful of cylinders here that I hand-picked for this video today. There's a lot of different cylinders you can get for a motorized bike. And I think I pretty much have everything you can get right here in front of me. So we'll just start with what we got here. So most of these are 47 millimeter, 47, 47, 47, 47. All these guys here are 47. This one included is 47. This one's a 49. That's a 47, and this is a 50. What I want to tell you guys about these is basically the differences in the cylinders, what you can expect from them, what their best application is, and from a standpoint of easy to use versus modification versus longevity, what you're going to expect out of these. So we'll start. So this cylinder here is your standard round port 40 millimeter intake, and basically out of the box stock. Let me turn on the light here. Basically out of the box stock, this cylinder is basically, probably in the neighborhood of 150 degrees exhaust, 135 transfers, and just a stock intake. Out of the box, these require modification to make any decent power or just be longevity anyway. You can see the transfers in those are pretty terrible, but this is your just quick buy off eBay or Amazon cylinder. These will require for sure port work. Personally though, if you're going to go with a 47, this isn't a bad cylinder. They're easy to work with, and most people can find these. Good cylinder for easy port work. The material in them is pretty soft. So anyway, that's a standard one. Those are pretty much standard right now. This is an older cylinder with the oval exhaust. If you didn't want to do any port work at all, this cylinder would actually have more power than the just standard round port out of the box, because the exhaust has more surface area and width versus the round port over there. Again, these castings are pretty terrible, but they're really soft, easy to port. This one has a 32 millimeter intake on it. These are the older style cylinders that you used to only be able to get probably around 2008 to like 2012. They were pretty standard. This one here is a G4 aluminum cylinder. The aluminum in these style castings are actually quite a bit harder to port. This one has a bridged exhaust, as you can see. I like the bridge. You can port the heck out of these things. I'll show you my cylinder that I ported. The transfers in these come really low, so you'll have to port your transfers a little bit, but there's not a lot of material. You can see how thin that is right there. There's not a lot of material all the way up through the wall, so you actually can punch a hole through it really easily. So you have to be careful with that. These open transfer port style, I personally like these on a piston port engine where you don't have a reed valve. It would be a non-reed. I personally think they make the best non-reed cylinders because your transfers are so low. They kind of make a torquey engine when they're non-reed. This is a split port as well. This is the one I used in Apex of May of 2019. This exhaust is, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 44 millimeters wide. It ran really good. It was a pretty good running engine. You can see I cut the transfer there. Also added boost ports that weren't very good, but they flowed a little bit. But yeah, I wind the exhaust quite a bit. But as you'll see, when you widen the exhaust, you can kind of hardly tell. There's actually a hole in the exhaust that goes into the stud because I went too far. So that's something to note. We call this the bunny rabbit ears boost port. I was trying to make the tops flat, but I don't know. It might have worked good. It seemed to run okay. I was getting like 9,500 RPM out of this cylinder. I leveled both the transfers out to make them equal, and the exhaust was timed at 168 with a 40 millimeter stroke, so it ran okay for what it was. I think I could have done a better job, but maybe for another time. Now, this one here, this is a Falcon 911 jug. I wonder if it says it. Yep, it does. Falcon 911. Out of the box, compared to every other cylinder here for the most part, this cylinder is going to harness you more power without doing any port work whatsoever. And the other neat thing about these, I don't know how well you can see it, but this cylinder actually is Nicosil. This is real Nicosil. And it's probably got somewhere in the neighborhood of like 170 degree exhaust, and the transfers are actually in really good shape. This is one of the 32 millimeter style ones. I want to put a saw carb on this cylinder. The aluminum is actually really hard stuff. It's really good quality. I think these are what you call injection molded. But yeah, this cylinder is really nice. You get what you pay for, so I personally believe that these are well worth the $100 that you could spend on them. You'll get way more miles out of a Nicosil cylinder versus a the chintzy aluminum ones. This one here is a Smolik Performance Ethan cylinder. Figured I'd show you guys one of these since I have one. Basically, this cylinder is exactly the same as a round port, except for he machined off the intake and added the reed valve style. Basically, the same reed valve as this. My comments on this is, I believe it's probably a good setup because you can trap more swept volume of the intake per stroke, and you get the intake closer to the port, which makes your what's the word I'm looking for? Your charge, your velocity, your pump effect. Gosh darn it, your intake charge, we'll call it. It gets it closer to the cylinder, and you don't have as much drag through the system, as you could say. Again, this cylinder is going to require port work. Just another soft aluminum cylinder, where things need a lot of work. But I really like the design here. You could port all that out, and it would basically almost make it into a kind of like a case reed induction almost, where you gain a lot of intakes port duration per stroke when you cut that out. Probably makes quite a bit of power, as seen in the videos with Ethan Racing. He stays out in front pretty good with this engine, or these cylinders. Now we're going to move into the iron bore cylinders. I got two iron bore jugs here. Move some jugs around real quick. So this one here is a 49 millimeter iron bore. Now I personally like them. They're a good cylinder, but they require a crud load of work. As you can see on the intake here, it just looks really bad. They painted on the inside, and yeah, you gotta port a heck of a lot out of these things. The transfers, they don't really line up to the bottom where the casting is, and so you have two options. You either have to cut all the way down with the transfer port all the way down to where you get to the casting, or you have to backfill the port and then report the whole thing to get the proper amount of to lift it up to match where the port is for the steel sleeve. If you were to just leave it the way it is with this cylinder, you probably wouldn't make much power. This cylinder has so much flow. What's the word I'm looking for? It's holding back a ton of flow just for the fact that all these ports are really small. And then with the lip, with the transfer port like that, it's just going to create a huge swirl slash... What's the word I'm looking for? It's just not going to transfer very well at all. It's going to impair the flow terribly. So, out of the box, 49 millimeter cylinder. You got to do a ton of work to this thing to get any power. This one's a 47 millimeter steel sleeve jug, but as you can see, this one was pressed kind of cockamamie, so it needs a lot of work to basically straighten it back out to get it to work correctly. And you can see this one has a bridge in there, but the bridge is useless. It doesn't even match where the sleeve is, so the piston rings won't hit that. So you might as well just cut the bridge completely out first thing, because the bridge isn't going to do anything. But these jugs are really good for, in my opinion, case reads, because you get a lot of transfer pressure because of the ports being so small and the case read trapping so much volume that when it opens the transfers in this style jug, it pushes the fuel in and traps it really well. So I use these 47 millimeter ones with the steel bore and the G5 style for case reads. I personally think they work great for a case read. But if you were to use this out of the box with no port work or anything, it'll run, but it ain't going to run very good. So, cheapest, needs lots of port work. G4s, best for piston port. Falcon 911s are going to be your out-of-the-box most amount of power, zero port work style. Race proven. Definitely lots of power out of these. Gonna need to port it. Now I did want to show you guys a neat jug that they're kind of rare. This is the only one I've ever found. So this jug is a 32 millimeter intake. The casting is super thick. Like the walls of this thing are just ridiculously thick. So I got like 3.75, whereas the walls of like something like this are 1.92. This one's probably just as thin. 2.24. So anyway, the walls of the transfers are really thick, so it's not going to blow out the wall when it gets destroyed. But the really neat thing about this jug is how low the transfers are. Sorry, I had to put my camera down for a minute. My measuring tool here is starting to fall apart. Might be time for a new one. So, try and get it down there to where it measures about right. Need a little bit more. So, we're at about 37 millimeter, whereas a stock jug is normally, I'm going to have to move it over here so you can see better. A stock jug is normally somewhere in the neighborhood of like 33, so about there. Oh, okay, yeah, 30. So anyway, the major difference is this one on a 40 millimeter stroke, the transfer is going to open quite a bit more, whereas this one, the transfer is super low in the casting, and it's not going to open hardly at all. So this jug I'm actually going to only be able to use with a stroker crank. But even with a stroker crank, the piston's only going to open that transfer maybe 2/3 of the way. So I'm probably going to have to raise it some. But I've never seen one of these other than this jug, and I've gone through probably a couple hundred of them. Yeah, this one's an ultra rare one. I stumbled upon it on an engine I pulled apart, and it just happened to be on it, and it also wouldn't run, and it had a 38 millimeter stroke, and the transfer was only barely cracking open. But anyway, so these are all 2 ports, motorized bicycle stuff. I wanted to also compare it to some scooter cylinders. So this cylinder here is a 50 millimeter AV10 cylinder with Nicosil. This is a 6 transfer port jug scooter cylinder. And then this one here is just an iron bore Minarelli with a reed valve up front. This one is a 5 transfer port jug. A lot of people are starting to switch these and this style of jug, and the reason being is the more transfer ports you have, the more power you're going to make. And then also with a lot of these scooter cylinders is they come out of the box basically for the most part ready to go, to where someone can make quite a bit of power by literally just slapping on a cylinder. But I mean, if you are in the hobby to do the port work, then that's your thing, or you can just slap the cylinders on and call that your thing, whichever it is, but it's all fun. So anyway, these are basically all the cylinders you could possibly run into on the market. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video and learned something, or at least just enjoy watching the videos about different parts. Anyway, I'll see you guys later.